If you agree that true leadership never fades, like and subscribe, because this story proves that courage doesn't retire, it simply waits to be called again. She wasn't a legend that day, just a quiet woman in her late 20s, standing in a half-empty mess hall at Fort Bristow, stirring an old field ration over a burner. To the cadets behind her, she was invisible, just Price, the supply officer who ate cold meals and never talked much. They joked she'd been assigned kitchen duty for being slow in drills. None of them knew she'd once written the emergency protocols they practiced every morning. She didn't correct them. She never did. The only thing that gave her away was the scar running along her wrist and the battered radio resting beside her tray, an olive green box older than anyone in the room. Rain began tapping on the tin roof, thunder low in the distance. The cadets laughed louder, mocking her rations, her silence, her stillness. But when the radio came alive, their laughter died instantly. Static hissed, then a voice broke through. "Captain Price, alarms triggered, move out." The mess hall froze. Someone whispered, "Did that thing just say Captain?" But Alina Price was already standing, her expression sharpening from calm to command. She reached for the radio, voice steady. "Confirm source." A pause. Then the voice returned, urgent. "Fort perimeter breach, southeast quadrant. Priority code, Echo 7. That name hit like thunder. Echo 7, the long-disbanded tactical unit every cadet had heard whispered about, but never confirmed. They said the only survivor vanished after the night fire incident. None imagined she'd be heating leftovers in their cafeteria. Without another word, Price zipped her jacket and strode out into the storm. "Lock the doors," she ordered. "No one leaves till I say so." Through rain-streaked glass, the cadets watched her march toward the comms tower, lightning framing her like a ghost come home. Riley, the youngest of them, picked up her name tag from the table. "Captain Alina Price, Tactical Response Command." His voice trembled. "She's not supposed to be here. She's supposed to be dead." Inside the tower, alarms screamed. Lieutenant Hayes burst in, dripping wet. "You have no clearance for this, Price." She didn't look up. "Then why's the system listening to me?" She typed in a code sequence, something ancient, muscle memory guiding her hands. The terminal blinked. "Access granted. Echo 7 active." Hayes froze. "How?" "Because I built it," she said quietly. Outside, red lights bathed the base in warning. Cadets crowded the windows, watching as she directed security units by radio, her voice calm in the chaos. Minutes later, everything fell silent again. The alarms cut. The rain eased. Then the door opened, and Captain Price stepped back in, drenched, eyes unreadable. She set the radio on the table and resumed stirring her meal. "Threat contained," she said simply. "Next time, trust the quiet ones." No one spoke. They just watched her in awe, realizing they hadn't been sharing a cafeteria with a forgotten officer, but with the woman who'd once commanded the kind of silence that only war could teach. And on her table, the old radio flickered once more. One faint pulse, steady and green. Echo 7, active. The storm hadn't even cleared when the whispers began. By sunrise, Fort Bristow was alive with rumors, each more breathless than the last. Captain Price answered a ghost call, someone said in the hall. Echo 7's back online. Others brushed it off as a training simulation, a prank, a glitch in old tech. But no one could explain the red alerts that blared across the base or the way the entire comms grid had gone dark, except her radio. When Captain Alina Price walked into morning briefing, still damp from the night's rain, the room went silent. She didn't speak. She didn't explain. She just poured herself a cup of black coffee and sat by the window like she'd been doing this her whole life. Her presence unsettled everyone, not because she was loud or commanding, but because she was still. Lieutenant Hayes, red-eyed and defensive after a sleepless night, broke first. "You mind explaining what you pulled last night?" he snapped. "My personnel thought it was an invasion." Price didn't look at him. "It was a systems breach," she said simply. "Someone accessed a channel that shouldn't exist." Hayes laughed, nervous and sharp. "You mean your toy radio?" "No," she replied, eyes lifting at last. "I mean Echo 7. That name landed like a dropped rifle." A few younger cadets blinked in confusion, but the older officers shifted uncomfortably. Echo 7 wasn't in their manuals. It was a classified ghost, a tactical unit erased from records after a mission that went catastrophically wrong. The mission that had killed dozens and left only one survivor. And that survivor was now sitting across from them, sipping coffee. Before Hayes could retort, a voice cut through the intercom. Lieutenant Hayes to command. Unauthorized movement detected in Storage Bay 12. The room fell into chaos. Hayes swore under his breath, motioning to his team, but Price was already on her feet. "You're not cleared," he began. "Neither is whoever's in your storage bay," she said, brushing past him. The corridors smelled of wet metal and electricity as they hurried through. When they reached Bay 12, the steel door was buckled inward, half torn from its hinges. Inside, the air reeked of burnt circuits. Crates lay overturned, and one of the old surveillance servers had been ripped open, its cores still humming faintly. Riley, trailing behind her, swallowed hard. What happened here? Price knelt beside the damaged panel, tracing a gloved finger across a burn mark etched into the metal. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. A pattern, circular, and at its center, a single engraved symbol, a faded number 7. "Someone's reactivating old field tech," she murmured. "Someone who knows the codes." Hayes shook his head. "You're saying ghosts are hacking my base?" "No," she said, standing. "I'm saying the past's not finished with us." Back in the control tower, the main screen pulsed with unreadable static. Price's radio lay beside it, dormant but waiting. "Can't be them," Hayes muttered. "No one survived that mission but you." "Not true," Price said quietly, typing in a series of override commands. There was one more. The monitor flickered, then steadied, revealing a string of encrypted text scrolling too fast to read. Her heartbeat quickened. It was a code she knew by muscle memory, one she hadn't seen since the day the desert turned red with fire. Operation Nightfire. Who else knew this protocol? Raleigh asked softly. "Major Voss," she said. "He was my second in command. They said he never made it out." The radio answered for her. The sound cut through the room, low, distorted, like someone whispering through static. "Echo, 7 wasn't finished, Captain. You left me there." Raleigh flinched. Hayes turned pale. Price froze. "Voss," she breathed. The voice came again, colder now, almost calm. "You buried the mission, but it remembers you." Then silence. The storm outside deepened, thunder shaking the window panes. Hayes stumbled back, whispering he's dead. "He has to be." Price stared at the radio, her reflection rippling in its scratched metal. "The dead don't trigger encrypted alarms," she said. "And they don't talk in codes only I wrote." Then, without warning, the power cut. The tower went black. Emergency lights blinked on, casting everything in blood-red glow. From somewhere beyond the base fence came a sound, dull, rhythmic, mechanical. Riley pressed against the window, peering into the rain. "Drones," he whispered. Tiny red lights moved through the trees, advancing in formation. Price's voice was low but steady. "He's testing us. He wants to see if I'll answer the call again." Hayes grabbed her arm. "This is madness. You don't even know it's him." She pulled free. "I know how he moves." Price grabbed the sidearm she hadn't touched in years from the emergency locker and chambered around. The sound echoed like punctuation in the tense silence. "Riley," she said, "get the cadets underground. If the comms go dead again, follow my trail. It'll be marked in code." He hesitated. "You're going alone?" "I'm not alone," she said, nodding to the radio, its green light pulsing once more. He's still talking. And then she was gone. Out into the storm, her silhouette swallowed by rain and flashes of light. From the tower window, the cadets watched her move through the darkness, lightning illuminating her shape in intervals. A lone figure striding toward the past that refused to die. Riley swallowed hard, realizing that the woman they'd mocked for heating rations was now walking back into a battlefield none of them could imagine. "She's not afraid," one cadet whispered. "No," Riley said quietly. "She's remembering." Outside, the storm roared. The radio crackled one last time before cutting to static. And somewhere beyond the perimeter, a single coded message pinged across forgotten satellites, bouncing between abandoned frequencies. "Echo, 7 re-engaged." By dawn, the rain had thinned to mist, but Fort Bristow was far from calm. Power still flickered across the compound, and smoke drifted from the south fence where the breach alarms had triggered. Cadets moved in tense silence, watching the tree lean as if expecting ghosts to emerge. None of them had seen Captain Price return. Riley hadn't slept. He'd spent the night in the tower, the old radio clutched in his hands, replaying the final static again and again, listening for her voice. Then, just as the first sliver of sun cut through the fog, a faint transmission came through. Echo, 7 secure. Repeat, Echo, 7 secure. Riley nearly dropped the radio. It's her, he whispered, before bolting out the door. They found her near the east perimeter, kneeling in the mud beside a downed drone, its circuitry fried, its lens cracked like an unblinking eye. She looked exhausted but alive, her jacket torn, streaks of soot on her face. Status? She asked without looking up. Riley stammered. Base is stable. Power's returning. Drone stopped moving at 0400. She nodded once. Good. Then we can breathe again. Hayes arrived moments later with 2 MPs, his earlier arrogance gone. Price, he said quietly, commands on the line. They want to speak with you. Inside the tower, a secure link flashed across the monitor. Department of Defense clearance, level black. When Price stepped up to the console, the screen flickered to reveal a grizzled general in formal uniform. He didn't smile. Captain Alina Price, he said, his voice heavy with recognition. It's been a long time. She stood straighter. General Kearns. He nodded. We didn't authorize this reactivation. Echo 7's beacon was supposed to be buried for good. Do you know who triggered it? Price hesitated, then turned her gaze toward the shattered drone. Major Voss, she said finally. Or what's left of him. The general's expression darkened. You're certain? His voice came through our encrypted channel. His code patterns matched. He's running a ghost protocol, using remnants of our old network. Kearns exhaled sharply. Then it's true. The Nightfar system's still alive. Behind her, the cadets listened, barely breathing. The general continued. Your actions contained a potential breach, Captain. You saved this base from a live cyber incursion. But that call you answered, he paused. It wasn't meant for you. Price's jaw tightened. Then who was it meant for? The general looked away. The system was testing response viability, seeing if old commanders still respond to ghost calls. His tone softened. You did. For a long moment, Price said nothing. Then she gave a small, weary smile. Guess I failed retirement, sir. The general's eyes glimmered faintly. Maybe the world still needs you not to. After the call ended, the tower was silent again. Hayes approached, his voice lower now. I didn't believe you. I thought you were chasing phantoms. She didn't look at him. You weren't wrong, she said softly. Sometimes the phantoms chase back. He nodded, shamefaced, and left without another word. The cadets remained by the door, unsure whether to speak. Riley finally stepped forward, holding the battered radio. It never stopped transmitting, he said, even after the breach ended. She took it from him gently, turning the dial until the static melted into silence. It's not broken, she murmured. It's listening. That evening, the mess hall was quiet again. Price sat at her usual table, heating another ration tin. This time, no one joked. A few cadets sat nearby, watching her with newfound respect. Riley gathered his courage and asked, Ma'am, what happens now? She stirred the stew slowly, the small flame reflecting in her eyes. Now, she said, now you learn what we forgot, that a uniform doesn't make you ready. The moment does. She looked up, her voice softening. And when the call comes, you don't ask if you're still capable. You just move. The room fell silent. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. When she finished eating, she stood, adjusted her jacket, and walked out into the dusk. The cadets exchanged glances, but didn't follow. They knew some ghosts preferred solitude. Through the window, they watched her disappear down the path toward the comms tower, the evening light framing her like a faded photograph. On her table, the radio flickered once more, green and steady, and for just a heartbeat, a voice whispered through the static. Echo, 7, mission complete. Captain Price acknowledged. Riley stared at it, the sound echoing softly through the hall. She's still out there, he said quietly. Another cadet nodded. She never left. Outside, the wind carried the last of the storm clouds away, leaving only the hum of the generator and the faint glow of that old radio. Still alive, still waiting. And somewhere deep within the encrypted bands of forgotten frequencies, the system logged one final note. Echo, 7, active command restored.